when I played in the band Megafaun, like there was a 2 or 3 times that we just drove past Big Pink. I guess that's Socrates, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's it. Cool.
yeah.
Well, let's jump into it because that's
Okay,
kind of interesting, actually.
okay, cool.
uh, you're listening to NYC Radio Live. David Ellenbogen here. I'm thrilled to be speaking with Joe Westerlund on his way to a Big Ears Festival with a bunch of performances coming up. So on his own and with the band setting. And yeah, man, congrats on all
Yeah,
the exciting new releases and
thank you.
great projects.
Yeah, yeah, I'm super pumped about it. It's been like the busiest record release schedule of my life this year. So, yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I think actually I feel like something's going on. I mean, right now, apparently it's the equinox momentarily or something like that. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, it feels like things are going into overdrive for a lot of people. And I guess sounds
Yeah.
like,
It's good. I'm glad I'm not alone.
yeah. So that's kind of interesting. You're saying off mic that in your band Megafaun, you guys just kind of uh, I don't know if the word is played homage, but you kind of just drove by
Yeah.
all the
Yep.
big pink
Yep.
house.
We did
That was
a big pink drive-by a couple times, few times maybe. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, just looked at it. I mean, yeah, that was a big important part of that era of my life. Like the disillusion of DeArmond Edison, which was the band that we moved from Wisconsin to North Carolina to do, and that split into Bon Iver and Megafaun. And yeah, it was around that time that I mean, it had already like been into the basement tapes, but I think all of us, but I know me especially, I was just like kind of devouring every like piece of literature about that time in the band and Bob Dylan's history. And so yeah, that was just like a big, I don't know, for whatever reason. I mean, those are, with the first like few years, we had always done like little tours, but it wasn't until we started Megafaun started touring with Akron Family that we like really did like the full US and started doing it multiple times in a year. And yeah, so it was like maybe in those first 2 or 3 years of like real in earnest touring from like the end of 2007 to 2009 or 10 that we'd just like, yeah, if we had time and we were passing by, that we would make the extra uh side trek to go just look at it.
Yeah, I've yet to do it. For people who haven't clued in, Big Pink is where Bob Dylan and the band, and actually Alan Toussaint showed up and wrote those horn arrangements there.
Oh, he
Um,
did. Wow. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a part of it I forgot about. Cool.
yeah, it's in
That's even cool.
Levon's. Levon
Okay.
has an amazing autobiography.
Yeah, the This Wheels on
Yeah,
Fire. Yeah,
so he
I
mentioned
read
that.
that a
Yeah,
long
that
time ago. Cool.
Alan Toussaint
Yeah.
came up from New Orleans and turned the heat up like maximum because I guess he wasn't used to the weather
Oh.
and
Nice.
yeah, and
Cool.
just wrote all those classic horn arrangements that they're still performing today. I just caught Amy Helm
Oh,
and her sons, and they still play at Levon's Barn every other week, and it's incredible.
wonderful.
It
Cool. I've
Everybody in the
always
band.
wanted
It's
to
like
go.
her stepdad is the guy from Steely Dan.
Oh,
What's his name? The keyboard player.
okay.
But he's on keys, and it's just everybody's outrageous level musician, and then they all sing absolutely perfect harmony, like
That's
every instrument.
incredible.
And then it's like Levon's grandson comes up and sings like Tears of Rage after
Okay.
drum kit or something. It's very moving.
Incredible.
and it's still
Wow.
going. Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Well, yeah, do you go? Like, I mean, do you, because you're living there, like, do you go see the Pink House, or do you go
I've
to the barn and see
I've
shows?
yet to see the Pink House, but
Okay.
it's actually so silly. Like it's Woodstock. So my wife met like a really friendly neighbor and she invited us to her house party and we showed up the wrong day
Okay.
and because it was Christmas and we showed up. We thought it was New Year's, so we showed up. I'm sorry, it was Christmas, so we showed up Christmas Day instead of Christmas Eve. And she's like, "Oh, I know. Come New Year's, And we're like,
Okay.
oh, we can't. We're good." And then she,
Okay.
okay, I tell you what, I play at this place so twice a week. So it turned out that our friendly neighbor was Amy Helm, actually, and like,
Oh, really? Wow.
and the
Cool.
charming young boy who came out to say, "Is your car broken?" because we pulled up on the wrong day, was his Levon's grandson.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
so
Cool.
we've been going when we have time. She invites us over to catch the band, and
That's so cool.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. This area is ridiculous like that. Well, cool. Yeah, so
Cool.
yeah, I did check out Megafaun, who I guess I was under a rock or something, but they were on my radar. But I was checking it out,
Okay. Cool.
and it's like very. I mean, it's really compelling stuff, and it's really interesting that kind of combination of how that group was able to capture like a kind of psychedelic drone sound even with acoustic instruments. You could just have like a
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. That was, I mean, we were getting into all sorts of stuff, and like our first record was released on Table of the Elements, which
mhm.
is, are you familiar with that label at
No.
all? It's like they it's an avant-garde record label. They released a lot of music by like Tony Conrad, just like a lot of Arnold Dreiblatt, who Megafaun ended up working with right at the end of our band. Um, just like a lot of minimalist composers, kind of part
Mm.
of this like second wave or third wave. I should know that which one it is, but uh, uh, yeah, kind of second wave. A lot of like New York uh, minimalist composers, and so that was part of. I mean, that was part of what we were already interested in before we were on that label. And I was fresh off of studying with Milford Graves for 3 years at Bennington College, and then so we had all these like various interests, but some of the stuff that we grew up playing in bands together in high school in rock bands, and we're really into like the jam band thing, um, and a lot of other stuff too, and jazz, like did like school jazz band and stuff like that. But like once we moved to North Carolina, there was just a lot more emphasis on like folk music and uh, um, like North American folk traditions, and just that was another thing we were exploring more freshly. So all those things, it was it was almost like we're like weird stoner researchers or something, and we just found all these things that we felt belonged, I guess, to us. They all belonged together, and so that was pretty much the focus of the adventure of that group. Was like, let's just there's nothing we will like edit out of like what we're interested in exploring. It's like this band is like a workshop for everybody to write songs and implement their crazy ideas into some kind of song form, is usually what that was kind of the basis of everything, was kind of like song form. But
Yeah, it's kind
yeah.
of like as you're talking about it, it's almost like a Stanley Brothers meets like Lamont Young or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, totally. And Lamont was on that Table of the Elements. Like he had a lot to do with that. That's the world that the Table of the Elements was sort of like feeding or
Oh, okay.
exposing. Yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
So, yeah, and then, when I saw that you had studied with Milford Graves, that kind of like put some things together too for me. So he was once on this program, like on my radio show, just called in, and
Oh,
he's
cool.
he's such a compelling guy.
Oh, yeah,
He's someone you want to take notes when you talk to.
yeah.
I'm
I
just
did.
curious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I took copious notes. Yeah, yeah. And I didn't really understand what the notes were. I would just write. A lot of times he was referencing like like known boxers or something like that. Just like uh and and I would just be writing down names that he said, or like a lot of like Afro-Cuban jazz musicians. These were all names that were like new to me, or some of like the free jazz people that he um ran with, in his kind of like heyday. Um and then it was, like all the other subjects that were included was like holistic healing and everything that entails for him, and his heart uh studies. And um man, he'd go into like, he'd just all of a sudden go on a tangent about like uh indigenous music of like Central Africa, and um martial arts, cooking, all these things. So it was just these notebooks that I still have. They're a mess, and a lot of it's just like, oh, he said I didn't know what this meant, and so I just jotted it down, and then I'd like go, you know, to the computer lab. I still had, I didn't have my own computer at that time, like a laptop or anything. So I'd go to like the library and look up, the whatever name or thing, or that he had said, that I was like, felt a little, it was bewildering. Like a lot of the times the lectures were kind of bewildering to me, because I was there because I wanted to get that education, and I knew he was there. They had a, like, that education is like a very free form specific thing, like kind of like no grades. It's a hippie school, and like no grades, no requirements, kind of build your own curriculum. And that was like the main reason I wanted to go there. And then I found out that he was there, and that John Zorn had put his latest record out on his label. And so that was something I was interested in. Beyond that, beyond like the downtown New York avant-garde scene, and I knew very little about that. But beyond that, I didn't know anything about like Milford's history and his place in like kind of the history of free jazz, or what that even was. I didn't listen to Albert Eiler at that point even. So um, it was a getting there and being around him was just this kind of like bewildering, like mega download of information. And yeah.
And I forgot, what was he had a whole like scientific experiments or something
Yes.
like that. What was that?
Well, at least while I was there, this is like 2002 to 2005. His main area of focus was on like, the best way I can describe it is like kind of tonal um research of heart beats and rhythms. And it's like, I like shy away from saying like heart rhythms, because everyone automatically thinks like ba boom, ba boom, ba boom, which is like part of it. But what he was doing was he was taking just like a sample of maybe just the ba part, or the bump part, or maybe just one ba bump, and he would stretch it out and like in the computer take a sound and kind of like stretch it to the point where individual tones and melodies would sort of emerge from the recording that he had taken from a stethoscope. And he'd do this for people, and he'd like uh, basically have this computer generated uh, uh, like music of your own heartbeat that he would give you. I never got one, funny enough. But I did know there were people um, in my class, you know, that had it done. I think by the time I got there, he was shying away from like doing that for the students as much. But like people that were there before me had gotten their like their heart song. It was really far out, and you know, there was one time I went to his house. It was like a field trip. It was like you know, I got out of my other classes to go to his house in Queens, and went down to the basement where his laboratory was with a bunch of students, and he had this whole really fascinating system. And there was a guy that was um, from the neighborhood that he had been working with for a while, and this guy was like getting acupuncture essentially like um, in his leg, but it was Milford had rigged up this system so that the recording and the kind of stretched out song that he had like lifted from this guy's heartbeat, a recording of this guy's heartbeat, was sort of like feeding into and vibrating the acupuncture needle in his leg. And that was like one of the experiments that he was like, this is the answer, you know, like this is the answer, this is the cure for cancer, or this is the cure for, you know, something. This is the kind of thing, you know, that will help you heal at the very least, you know. And yeah, it's like, what do you do with that when you're 21-year old from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, that I had only lived in Eau Claire, and every major part of my life at that up to that point had all happened within like a 2-3 mile radius, you know, like all the schools, all the, you know, college, everything, you know, all the big like uh milestones of life up to that point that most people experience had all happened in this like 2-3 mile radius. And then I'm like put into this guy's basement in Queens where he's doing that kind of thing. It was just like mind blowing. Didn't even know what to do with it for probably a couple of years, you know. And then uh we started this band Megafaun and started touring, and I honestly kind of fell out of touch with Professor for, you know, a couple few years, many years actually. And then we reconnected at the Big Ears Festival in 2018. And after that, it was kind of like regular phone calls and a couple other events that we shared together.
So, what was that population number when you said Eau Claire,
Oh,
Wisconsin?
Eau Claire is like a 60,000.
Okay. So it's
Yeah.
not exactly life on the prairie, but it's not a
No, it's
big
like
metropolis either.
you know, it's changed significantly, especially in this like post Bony Fair world. Not really post, but after that happened, there seemed to be a lot more of a like art artist culture kind of like gaining steam there. And but before that, it was um, this kind of like seemingly cookie cutter uh yeah, sort of resembled more of like a suburban spot. you know, place.
Anywheresville.
Anywheresville, yeah, and a little bit, um, there's some things. There is always like um certain places that seem felt like, oh, this is of the Midwest, or this is of like, you know, this is an Eau Claire place. They've since sort of like, I felt like in the last 10 years, those types of places have been more celebrated. But yeah, it kind of felt like it was a great incubator for us to just sort of naively make our, there was like kids putting on punk rock shows in their lofts above their uh, parents' wood shops, and you know some like benefit concerts at like the local sportsman club, and stuff like that. Like we made our own culture. We made our own fun, and like developed ourselves artistically as much as we could as like teenagers, and in our early 20s. um but yeah, it was kind of, that's the setting is definitely like kind of a more suburban. It's not the sticks, it's like
Mhm.
suburban
So
esque.
that's so interesting because it's like, you came from there and you met Milford, and it was overwhelming, like you didn't know quite what to do with 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 the amount of information coming at you and the novelty of it all. And
Yeah,
then it
yeah,
sounds like, after touring, things started to come together and you're able to kind of like connect with him on a different level after time
yeah,
passed.
yeah. A lot of like what he was teaching his students was was more in line with like how to live your life, you know, outside of academia. And yeah, I mean, it felt more like street knowledge or something, and it was delivered in that way, in a very like formal, informal, non anti-academic kind of way. He was lecturing through most of it, so that's like, it's like, it has this like academic aspect to it, but he was very like against the grain in that school, because that school was like, you called all of your professors by their first name. You sort of directed like what you wanted to work on. And Milford was very anti that. We all called him Professor. He didn't like it, people calling him Milford. Um, uh, and it was kind of like a wait. You wait for him to sort of direct and know when you're ready, to like get to the next level or get to the next thing, or research this specific thing. Um, I remember, yeah, like I don't know, there's so many different examples, but he yeah, he just had it was a different situation with him. So I was already like, you know, confused by the and trying to learn the new like academic system I was like entering into, and like the philosophy behind it and everything, and like how it was supposed to work, and how people weren't just gonna like slough off and like blow off their classes, or and not work hard, like it just seemed to be kind of like you could just like breeze by if you wanted to. But I was really hungry to just learn all the things I could from him and from the other professors that were kind of, they were all blowing my mind with um, sort of all aspects of like avant-garde music from 1950s to the present day. Like it was all, I was kind of like into the more classical based stuff, and listening to a lot of like the electronic stuff and free jazz, and more straight ahead jazz, and um, like performance artists like Meredith Monk, and um, I mean, in music, there's she's a musician as well, but and modern dance, contemporary dance, you know, it was just all of it was new to me and I was really wanting all of it. So that was the thing I was obsessed with at the time that I'm studying with Milford and getting all these kind of like, oh, hey, this is what, rice and have a good rice and beans recipe because if you're a musician because you're going to be poor. You know, like that was the kind of knowledge. I mean, that's like the one of the most basic ones, but like that was the kind of knowledge he was trying to impart. And so that stuff became as I was entering into, oh, I'm a touring musician with a dead end job trying to break in and make touring and music my livelihood, at the age of like, 23 to 30, I was really hitting it hard with that band Megafaun and learning a whole bunch of stuff along the way that would kind of like, oh, Milford said this, you know, things would just hit me. Also ways to just like project yourself. He had a lot of like advice about projecting oneself to, uh, get a gig or, you know, make an impression on people. He had a story about like going to Africa. I believe it was Nigeria. I can't remember actually, but he had this story about going to Africa and like playing for people, playing the free jazz music for people, and it, just like the way his approach, he wanted to like impart his approach to that specific situation, um, and like the right way to do it to get the reaction, the like a meaningful reaction. It wasn't just that, like, going to Japan, going, just playing. I'd go see him play in places in New York, and it would be kind of like okay, so what did you notice? Like, did you see me do this? Did you see me, do A, B, and C? And what was what's your takeaway from those things?
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty deep. Not something that was easy to understand at the time, but it all stayed in there and became very useful to me more and more, increasingly more in my life as I get older.
Yeah, I don't know if you're hip to Joseph Campbell at all,
A
but
little bit, yeah,
yeah, I mean
yeah.
he's the total archetypical, like, whatever, wizard or guide. This guy came along and like imparts all this like wisdom and kind of
Uh-huh.
changes your
Yeah,
direction, especially as a
right,
young person.
right.
You're kind of looking for that, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
that's incredible.
yeah. It is incredible. It's an incredible thing. It's one of the more incredible things about my life is spending time with that guy for that much time.
Yeah, and musically, I mean, it sounds like this completely kind of altered your trajectory, what probably would have may have been your
Yeah,
trajectory, right?
yeah. I've been thinking about that a lot recently, and how you know I've had for there's another podcast I've been tasked with like picking three songs that changed the direction of my musical trajectory, and there's so much stuff in before Milford, and I just couldn't pick anything because the more that I thought about, it was a lot of like the band Fish and the Beatles and even like John Zorn's Naked City, um, and Spillane, Mr. Bungle, and all things like that. Those are all like really ingrained still in me. It's like things that definitely I've gone through um, uh, parts of my life where I want to like shove those in the closet and forget about them and not let anyone know about that, And like again, I think it's just like an age thing where I've gotten to the point where I'm like, no, this stuff was really cool. This stuff was like really blowing my mind back then. But it was in such a, it's less specific. I feel like I've met a lot of people in my life who do a similar thing, um, like play music, um, that have that same story. You know, they have that story of like, yeah, I did, you know, I got into music through Nirvana and, you know, and then like got into jam band stuff and then like got into like kind of avant-garde jazz or something. Um, Milford's really the first time where it's just like, okay, it really just went like, you know, like a sharp left turn into my entire understanding of what music was even. And I didn't always like it, you know. I didn't always, it felt uncomfortable a lot of the time, you know. I was like, he didn't want um he wanted me to loosen up and he wanted me to like not play with a snare drum, for example, too. Like everybody, that was everybody. He was very anti snare drum, and that's like that was like the center of the drum set, you know,
What do you do with a
as far as I
tuner?
understood, you know, like, do I have to play like this? But then, you know, now it's like I'm sort of, a lot of the music that I am playing that isn't in service of other people's songs, you know, where it's like mainly improvised. Um, a lot of that stuff I don't use a snare drum with. I have snares off, you know, I have the snare there. Sometimes it comes on, but a lot of times uh that is the thing right now to explore because it's so required, it's so needed in other people's music that this is my chance, you know, when I'm improvising with people, when I'm making my own music, that's my chance to explore something different, you know, and something that I'm not able to explore. It's not because, you know, the person in charge or writing the songs is like, no snares and or snare drum, you
Yeah.
got to have a snare drum. It's just like, no, it's like what the music requires, you know.
Yep.
It's just it's what sounds right and feels
It's
right.
the
And
genre. Yeah.
yeah, 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 totally. So there's room for play in all of it, but it's, yeah, so that's that's been a direct stylistic carryover from studying with Milford, among other
Yeah. And
things.
then it sounds like, you know, on some of your own albums, you're, you know, you're both getting into pure soundscapes and
Mm-hmm.
environments. You know, I mean,
Uh-huh.
speaking of environments, uh, I was hearing the the Imbira, and then when you mentioned Central Africa from Milford, like one thing I was
Mm-hmm.
going to ask you, I was thinking, has he heard that album, the Mbuti
Pygmies of the Ituri Forest.
Rainforests?
I mean, that's one of them that that recording is in my top 5 or 10 recordings of things that I am constantly find myself trying to mimic or um, kind of break apart. It's so mysterious how that music is made to me. And that record was actually introduced to me through a very dry ethnomusicology class that I took at the University of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, before I transferred to Bennington. And you know, so much of it was just about like the entire class was about the Mbuti pygmies of the Ituri forest, and all of it was just focused on reading what these white academics had written about this music. Of course, like that's what exists, right? But we barely listened to it, it's like maybe we listened to it once in the class. And so that was sort of like, it was tainted for me a little bit, that not the music, but just the subject of like, the Mbuti pygmies. And then fast forward to about a year or two later, I'm in Milford's class, and he's like, "Have you heard the Colin Turnbull recording of the Mbuti pygmies of the Ituri Forest?" And so I ordered the recording through like half.com or something, it was like Amazon or whatever. Got this, like, I still have a busted up CD copy of it. And like, it's the thing that when people are, I have a lot of people sitting in with me for these short runs that I do, tours that I do. Usually I book a show with like another solo artist opening or sharing the bill, and we'll do one of my pieces together. And that is usually, I'll send them a track off of that record and be like, okay, this section is like, we're gonna do this kind of like broken round, like row, row, row your boat type round, but totally free and open, like the Mbuti pygmies of the Ituri Forest. So, and I feel like it's one of those things. I've just been like preaching that gospel for the last few years of, to people, that this is some of the best music in existence.
I completely
Yeah,
agree. Yeah.
yeah.
And did you read the Joseph Turnbull's like biography or whatever, autobiography? Did
You
you?
know, I maybe at one point a long time ago, but
Yeah.
I should
Because
revisit
it's
if I
pretty,
have.
it's written really in a compelling way. And one story that was so amazing was that he took some of those local guys. I think he ended up marrying a woman. I think he was short himself, which is
Okay.
just interesting.
Okay.
And he took one of those guys. I guess they don't love the word pygmy. I guess it would be baka or a ka or
Right. Okay. Okay.
and
Yeah.
um
I've wondered that.
well, actually, they probably don't even care, to be honest. Like
They might not. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
they uh he took those guys out of the forest and they were on a mountain, and the guy's like, "Hey, what are those car guys, uh what are those ants?" And he's like, "Those aren't ants, those are cows." And he's like, "Ha ha ha, you're so funny." And these guys, because they'd always been in the forest, they never had seen anything more than like 10 feet away because everything's so dense, or 20 feet, you know what I mean? So
Uh-huh.
they never experienced perspective like from a mountaintop. And then when they drive down and he's slowly down the mountain and he realizes that what he thought were ants were cows, the guy just gets really quiet. Um,
Wow.
anyway,
That's amazing. That's cool.
that stuck with me. Yeah,
That's
the
cool.
other one I was curious about, you must have dug the Shona Imbira, the soul of
Yeah.
the Imbira record.
I had that record out just now because a friend of mine, a new friend of mine who just moved to Durham, he's been going to shows, and I just had him over at the house last night, 2 nights ago, to show me some of the songs that I don't know. Yeah,
Wow, you
yeah,
actually knew the tunes.
yeah,
So one, I was gonna, because I just had that feeling, so I was actually gonna send it to you. The One of the main Imbira players named Cosmas Magaya.
yeah. That's who he's talking about. Yeah, that's who
Oh,
my
okay,
friend
he
was.
learned it from
That's who
Cosmas.
my friend. Yeah, 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 yeah. Or he's at least. I don't know if they've been in the same room before, but he's looked at his, like, I guess, videos, and there's like a whole tuning system that is attributed to Cosmos.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I interviewed him once. He came to the
Oh,
radio
cool.
station, and I think it was at the radio station. And one thing you probably know this already, but he explained that their name for the instrument is called the nare, and nare means telephone because
Hmm.
it's called you're calling the spirits.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there is something about the Imbira. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you probably
Mm-hmm.
know better than me because you spent some time, but
A little
uh,
bit.
the name starts adding up pretty quickly. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I mean, it's such a, yeah, that recording specifically, the Shona, uh,
the soul of the Imbira.
Imbira,
Yeah.
yeah, Soul of the Imbira. Yeah, I've been listening to that. And so when this guy was in my living room, he started playing the song. I was like, that's the song. I know this one, like, and then I got the record out and we kept trying to find it and we couldn't find it exactly, but I know that there's somewhere there's like a recording that I've heard that was exactly what he was playing. Like, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean, there's something, I mean, all those traditions, there's like an interesting, like, architecture of that music, like with the pygmy akabaka people are playing. Like, it's this
Hmm.
combination of like what you're saying, like these rounds of different
Yeah.
lengths at the same time, but also this like incredible pitch sense, so like
Yeah.
everybody,
Yeah.
and something about that. And then it's like, from what I just gleaned from probably the same record jackets that you read, but there's music for everything. There's a music for
Yeah.
walking around, there's a music for hunting,
Right.
and
And those it's in the titles, right?
right,
Like
right,
hunting
elephant hunting
song and
song or
yeah,
something like
yeah.
that.
Right. Right.
But there's this concept too that they used to think about a lot, which was like, if you get the music right, everything will come together. And
Sure.
that kind, like,
Yeah.
if you're walking in the jungle, it's not a bad idea to be singing a song because it actually might ward off the
Yeah,
animals and that
exactly.
kind of thing.
Yeah. And the sticks, they're like
Mm.
they're kind of doing this like almost clave rhythm or something, and you can tell where that would come, like I recently went walking on a hike, like 3-day hike in Michigan around Lake Superior, and you know we just kept talking the whole time, but there were moments where I was just kind of like, I'm just gonna like bang some sticks together, to like make sure we're not gonna encounter a bear, you know.
Dude,
So
we're
you
too
can
similar. I
see
did the
like if
exact same thing. A bear popped out when I was walking in Muir Woods. And so
oh wow.
I switched over to playing the clave for the rest of it. Like,
There you go. There you go. Yeah, it's just like, oh, what, instead of just doing random, you can see how the random cha 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 cha, just turns into like, well, I'm just gonna play this, because you're walking in time. You want to do something repetitive that you don't have to think about too much. You just want to make noise. It makes sense that like you'd start playing some rhythm or you'd start singing a song, as opposed to just like making random noise. Eventually it's going to become something, you know?
think how far back that dates. I mean,
Yeah,
that could be
for sure.
40,000 years ago. People
For
are doing
sure.
the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And to go with that, I actually, I visited Kinshasa in the DRC
Hmm.
in 2021 because my sister had married a Congolese guy, and they met and lived in South Africa for like 6 8 years or something, 6 years at least, and then they moved to the States, had a son, um, and they wanted to bring their kid when he was 2 to like meet the family, and that I never once visited them when they were living in South Africa, and I was waiting. I knew they had gone once to Congo, and I was kind of like maybe subconsciously just waiting for the next time they were going to go to Congo and go with them. And so the opportunity came up, and they were like, actually, it'd be really nice to have help with the kid, it's like a long flight for the kid. And you'll see when you get there, it's like it's not a place you can just drop into as an outsider, let alone a white dude. It's just like a very confusing, busy place. And so I was really lucky to have this guide. And I also, because Megafaun, from my Megafaun days, I had this connection to Crammed Discs that had put out our record, and they're the same people that put out all the Congotronics records, like Kinshasa,
nice.
Kanona #1, the Kasai All Stars, Staff Benda Balili. I was into all this. I was really into all this music when they started releasing those records, and that was around the same time that we were on the label. So we were part of like a compilation that a bunch of like indie rock people and those Congolese musicians sort of like would collaborate or remix each other's stuff. So I was like, I reached out to the label and was like, I'm going to be in Kinshasa. It would be great if I could, get like jam with these guys or have a lesson, maybe buy an instrument from them. And, this is like 2021, the summer of 2021. They're like, please do that and be prepared to spend some money on these guys because, imagine the devastation that you feel as a musician from the pandemic. This has wiped out their entire way of life. Like, and I got there and saw that all the cafes where there's normally music being played 24/7, and these like cafes that are like they just line the streets, and it is literally, it's like like Mardi Gras or something is like the way that it was described to me anyway. It's just like, you don't like the music at this place, just go next door or across the street or across the street over there or walk down the block, or like it's just like the music almost assaults you. So it was dead quiet, and my brother-in-law and everybody else that I was talking about the music stuff with was just like, it's like strange here. It's like eerie. It's so quiet, But we encountered some of these places, these cafes where they were actually allowed to hold rehearsals, and we would just walk in and they'd start like performing for us. So we got like a little, but you couldn't like, I think there was like, they weren't allowed to amplify or they get busted, So we got this like very different experience, and like, could have been like sort of devastating for someone like me. Like the whole reason I was going there was like, I like this Mbuti music, and they're like, that's too far, into the country, and it's not safe over there. Like you can't go over there. Actually, we won't take you. But like there was all this like the Congotronics people. I quickly learned that like, these bands are like everywhere there, and a lot of, they made such a big deal about this amplification thing and these kind of like handmade electronics and busted up stuff. It's just, that's the sound of Congo. That's the sound of Kinshasa.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I said earlier they couldn't like amplify for rehearsal, but like all around you is people like selling stuff with these like busted up megaphones, and like it's just the whole sound of amplified Kinshasa is distorted. That is because everything's busted and old and handmade. Or so I had this experience through the label set up, where I got to go meet this guy named Mapero, who's kind of the leader of the Kasai All Stars and the guitar player, and then like two of the other musicians, the guy that played like the bass Likembe, they call it. It's the one you sit on, and it has the huge.
Like a Roomba box type thing.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Is
A
that
Roomba
like
box is just a giant. It's like a giant thumb piano, but you sit on it as a box, and it's used in Afro-Cuban music, and yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, totally. Yes, exactly like that.
Yeah.
I mean, different tuning and their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another guy that just played like the handheld Likembe, and I ended up buying his Likembe from him, and they showed me a couple riffs, and then they're like, that's all of it. And this is why I brought this up, is to get to the point of the story is at some point two things happened in that. They showed me the riff, we started jamming a little bit. Also, their power went out, so nothing was amplified. Their power went out like minutes before I got there, and they were really like nervous about it. They thought I was going to be upset or something. I was like, I really don't care. Like, I just want to learn, some of the music from you guys, and like have a translated conversation about the music, just so that I understand, like, where you're coming from and what this is, and like I just want to know more about it. And so they showed me a riff. We had a very quiet unplugged with an unplugged electric guitar jam. I've got videos of it. That was like just an incredible experience. Like I remember leaving the building and just looking at my brother-in-law with like, tears in my eyes of like, I never thought I'd be able to get to do this in my life. Like it was so incredible. But they showed me a couple riffs, and I was like, okay, like what else is there? And they're like, we don't really show you anyone more than this, especially like an outsider like you. We're not just gonna kind of like open the doors all the way. Like this is kind of like what we've got, to show. And I was like, what's the name of this thing you showed me? And they're like, it doesn't have a name. It's just, you could call it whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't have a name. And there was another rhythm that they were playing too that was kind of like clave-esque, and I was like, well, what's I'm like trying to like, kind of like trick them out of like, in a respectful way. I wasn't being that conniving, but I was like trying to just like, well, what about that? What about that rhythm? Like, does that have a name? And they're just like, no, there's no name for it. It's kind of like, they didn't say this, but it's like someone just started playing it and everyone started playing it. Another thing that my brother-in-law grew up in Kinshasa, at some point just started like singing with them. He's not a musician. He's like, I mean, he's very musical, but he's not like, he's like a computer, like a tech guy. And I was like, well, what was that, Ben? What was that? And he was like, nothing. It's Congo. Like that's what you do here. And so that's the thing, is like, there's no schools for this. It kind of goes along with the way that Milford taught too, in a lot of ways. A lot of that stuff, like the circuit's kind of closed for me, where it's like, no, what you are learning is, you are like, getting, you're getting exposed to the thing that your elders know, and the things that they've sort of like metabolized in themselves. And like it's like, to break it down, my brother-in-law was kind of saying like, the music's just part of what you get when you live here, like you just have it, and everyone's making up their own thing, because there's not like this what's the word I'm looking for, the academic word for, there's not like
a dissection or
there's not like the body
dichotomy
of work. No, there's not like the body of work,
like a canon
syllabus or
what?
you know, that they're just like that they're like, "Hey, you must read this and you must have, you
Right.
know, whatever, like you must know this tune, or yeah, you got to know giant steps, you got to be able to play, you know, anything off Kind of Blue, you know, there's none of that. It's literally like, oh, you're asking, you want to know something, you know, okay, well, here's this riff. I mean, that's kind of like what they did with me. You want to know something, here's this riff. And then now do your thing with it, you know? As opposed to, I think the way a lot of things happen in Congo, it's such a like rough place to live. Kinshasa is just like um you you sort of have to insert yourself and initiate your own thing, you know. um that's how you make a living there, that's how you get by data. It's very day-to-day living in that city, as far as everything I observed, pretty much like 95% of what I observed. So the way to uh yeah, the way to gain knowledge is to sort of like be part of the practice. um and not you're not no one's asking, people are asking for money and food all over the place, especially if you're a white dude walking around, they think you're, you know, you're from America and you're super rich. But uh no, they're not asking each other for, it doesn't seem to me that they're asking each other for like the same things. It's not set up in that way as like, you know, Western academia.
Yeah,
Pass this on to me. Here's what's the body of work I need to know.
mhm.
You know, there's none of that. It's like, what are you gonna do?
It's so interesting because it's like uh, it really reflects how we're colonized in our own way, right? And because like
Yeah,
I can
totally.
rail, I've always railed against the idea that like music is for specialists only, and I felt that music is really
Yeah,
everybody.
right.
It's part of being a human, and this idea that there's some people do it and some people don't. That it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that this is an artificial idea, and I've always had that concept, but still there's another layer that's like below where like I'm thinking like like in the last few years I went from playing more to like producing and just doing other stuff,
Uh-huh.
and like in my mind I'm like
Uh-huh.
I even in conversations I'm like, oh yeah, no, not really anymore, kind of thing, even though like
Uh-huh.
I've
Uh-huh.
like
Right,
had
right.
that flag
Yeah.
so high, and I'm sure even people might be like, oh, why don't you play something on a piano, and you'll be like, oh well, I'm not really a pianist, I'm more of a
Right.
percussion,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
like
Oh, all the time. Yeah. Oh, I don't really play piano. I pluck things out on a piano. I don't really perform on a piano, you know?
right.
Yeah.
And these people, yeah, it's just a totally different thing where it's just, yeah, it just is it whatever. I mean, I would side with the people who have that mentality that it's just like this concept of we're like so trained to break things apart constantly, right? Like
Yeah.
what is it, it's like it's that story could be like an allegory of like
Uh-huh.
the white man came over and he said, what is it? They said, it's nothing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally.
It's
Right.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah, no, it's really interesting. These like when worlds come together and you kind of see in the mirror your own blind spots in a certain way.
100%. Yeah. And continue to see them, you know. It's like yeah. And that was a very like pivotal experience for me, because I came back and was just kind of like, wow, I really have, you know, for as much as like just coming off the heels of the pandemic and like feeling like, oh, musicians, there it is again, you know, like musicians in this country are like, you know, very devalued and or whatever, chip on my shoulder that most people that try to make a life out of music like develop. I was kind of like back here and just going like, I literally have everything and can do anything I want, you know. And there's, you know, the limitations that I have are um it's like very abstract
Right.
compared to their, you know, compared to life in that I was observing in Kinshasa.
So interesting. And I read in some I don't know, maybe it was just press stuff that they were saying, but when I was telling you I really connected with that the Curiosities. What's it called? Curiosities from the Drift. Wait, which one is the one that has the
Well, it depends
clave
which
bass?
ones you're talking about. Wait, with the what?
The ones that's like kind of super clave, like it,
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's
that's the Drift.
Curiosities from the Shift.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that one, yeah.
yeah.
It said like in some of the press stuff that like you kind of went down a rabbit hole with the clave. Um,
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that's like, you know, I also am like, um, I'm trying to be careful with that a little bit too, because uh, there's, it's not my place to, I don't think, to be claiming some sort of like invention you know, of anything clave, new music. But I was inspired to learn more about it around the same time that I was making that music, and a lot of it you know, was um a lot of it ended up being backbeat based, you
mhm.
know. And so I think of it more in terms of like I've taken this sort of like wanting to learn more about clave rhythms for myself by studying with. I had like a really great teacher for uh, a little over a year named Brevin Hampton, who's he's a like a professor around here, and like a working drummer and percussionist, and is just very well versed in like all sorts of like Latin jazz forms. And he basically, I was just like, you know, Milford had planted a lot of these seeds, but it wasn't necessarily something I was like obsessed with yet at that time, you know. But I was, you know, I was working on the stuff that he gave me, but I wasn't researching as much like where did Milford, where, you know, like what, who, you know, he was into like Tito Puente and Mongo Santa Maria and like all these like very famous drummers from like the Afro-Cuban world, and like Puerto Rican world, and a lot of that was lost on me a little bit at the time because I was so, like I said before, like so obsessed with like every type of like avant-garde music that existed from 1950 to the present moment, and like experimental music or whatever. So it was kind of like through studying with Brevin, I was kind of going back and like, what influenced Milford? Where did he get, you know, what was his upbringing? Because a lot of that stuff, you know, he was, before he was playing with Albert Eiler and all those people, he was playing timbales in like a salsa band or something, or like Afro-Cuban jazz band, and like trying to, he has stories about like trying to get, I believe it was Tito Puente that he saw on the street, and he was like, I want to get a lesson with you, and Tito was like, I'll tell you what, come to the show, I'll put you on the list, that's your lesson, you know. Like things like that. That's the same thing as like what I learned from the Kasai All Stars in Kinshasa. That's the same. It's like transferred to, from teacher to student the same way. Just like, no, just come observe. Like you do the work. You know, like I'm not gonna like spoon feed you this stuff. You've
And the
got to.
thing is the thing.
The
Like
thing is the thing. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, that's another thing. Like we could talk about like notation, like learning from notation versus like just learning from observing somebody, you know. like Milford was observing the way what Tito Puente played, but also the way that he played it, and that's the thing that's like lost so much in Western academia is like, how do you teach feel? There's a way. There's multiple ways actually, but it's not, you can't write it down. So we don't believe that it's actually has value.
Yeah, and then a lot of these drummers, it's even something else because it's like their charisma on stage is like a big element. Like you
Yeah.
you will rarely meet African drummers that aren't like glowing when they're playing in West Africa or something like that, because it's part of like, you're projecting a lot of times the music, you're projecting your masculinity, or you're projecting something,
Yeah, sure.
projecting the
Yeah.
dancers. So it's like it's not just the sound. There's
Yeah.
tons of elements that we don't like. Like I was
Yeah.
studying for a while, I was studying like Afro-Cuban music, like the chants and stuff, and just trying to learn how they
Mm,
how being able to hit the clave and then sing these different melodies, because it's like
yeah.
that's like a whole science, is
Yes.
how they all
Yeah.
land on different parts in ways that you have to, if you haven't grown up that way, you have to kind of deconstruct your brain to like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
to let,
Totally. 100%.
you know
Yeah. Yeah.
my
Yeah.
wife put a stop to it because she's like very sensitive person, and she felt like these entities were showing up, and I was like, wait, that means I'm doing it. She
Yeah.
didn't want them
Yeah.
around.
She was.
So I haven't been doing that as much, but yeah. So I mean, there's so much. Yeah, there's so much to it, but I also
Yeah.
felt like the clave is kind of like, in a certain way, it's like one of the most efficient ways to imply a polyrhythm, because you're like implying a
Yeah.
2 and you're playing a 3,
Yeah.
at the same, very quickly you're
And I
feeling both
think
things.
that's the thing that is what the music that ended up on Curiosities from the shift is me just paying attention to, like, yeah, what side of the clave is this on? Is this a 2-3 or a 3-2? Even just that,
Yeah.
and just and sort of like, so it's very, that's what I mean when I say like, oh, I didn't take clave and like make this, weird music. It was more like, oh, what is, I kind of discovered like, what is the clave of any of this music? Like you take like a Lucinda Williams record. This is my favorite, like, um kind of thing to my my diatribe, I guess. I don't know, my thing to go off on is take a Lucinda Williams record, like one of my favorite studio musicians and probably one of everybody's favorite studio musicians of all time, Jim Keltner, the great uh, studio drummer from so many people, like Bob Dylan and the Beatles and etc. Ry Cooder, and I really fell in love with his playing on Lucinda Williams records and like the I don't know, mid aughts and beyond, and actually ended up like working at a place in LA where he was like kind of the main customer, and it was like it was this place called Drum Doctors, and was like the cartage and rental place that he housed all his instruments in, and we would go set up for his sessions. We'd set up his drums for his sessions and stuff. And it was like it was just to like overhear phone calls of him like, oh, this is what I want uh for this session today, and then to like go in and like clean up the session, and to like just get a couple seconds to like sneak some hits on the toms and the kick, and like just hear how he had tuned everything. Was like, that was a master class. The amazing, and just sort of, again, another thing, like I never thought I'd like touch Jim Keltner's drums, and like hear what it sounds like in the actual room, because this is what, hearing him play on these Lucinda Williams records so much, um I was like, these are some of the best drum sounds I'm hearing, and what is it the engineer? Is it Jim? Is it, what is it? And there's so many like thoughtful like overdubs and all these things. So uh I'm applying the clave stuff to like his playing with it. There's so many, he's such a textural player that like there's moments where, he plays like just like a little side stick on beat 2, and then like there's a snare drum on beat 4, and then the next measure back to the side stick on beat 2, and then beat 4 is like a louder, deeper snare drum with like a tambourine hit on it. And so you see how like there's something that he's hearing in Lucinda Williams' music that he's wanting to create a longer narrative structure in his beat making for her. And it kind of, I could be way off base, and I'm sure there's plenty of people, who are well versed in clave that would just be like, you're an idiot, like this isn't it. But to me, that says that it raises the question, at least, is that clave derived? Is that kind of what we're, I mean, it could also, I think first and foremost, Jim Keltner is listening to the song that the great Lucinda Williams is writing, and is probably reacting to, wanting to match that the story isn't this like single measure. The story is this like verse long thing, so why not have different events kind of happening throughout and make the phrase longer, reacting to the phrase. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I just kind of got on this kick of thinking like, how much can you abstract from clave, or like listening to those songs and just asking myself, is this a 2-3 or a 3-2? And is it, you know what I mean? Is it, what is the phrasing, that like could be that this song is created, and
what would they
is
say
it derived from that? What's that?
What would they say in Kinshasa to that question?
Oh yeah, they'd be like, you're okay, bookworm, But it's fun to think about, and it is my approach now, like anytime I'm playing, I mean, outside of like, there's definitely times where you're creating like this sort of like repetitive motoric, thing you would hear in like a Noy record or something, and it's like there's no clave and there's no 3-side or 2-side in that, because you're trying to create this thing that doesn't move, it just like goes up and down, and it just like stays in this like very narrow tunnel kind of. The other stuff, the other approach is like, yeah, how do I want to expand my playing so that it matches what's happening in the song, in the music, It's just a fun thing to think about.
Yeah, well,
it's a good, and it feels like a healthy way to approach making music.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like it's basically, once you have polyrhythms, it's like 3-dimensional music.
Yeah.
Totally. And even if it's not explicit, if the person's just thinking it, if they're feeling it, then it's, it's, and I think good musicians, good percussionists are probably at all times, polyrhythmic in their own concept, whether it's explicit or not. And there's a great Joe Boyd, who's also going to be on the same. Cool. Yeah, have you? So he's written an amazing book.
Okay,
and he's going to be. Oh, dude, it's going to change your life if you read it.
Okay.
It's a big, thick book, but it's called "And the Roots of Rhythm Remain," and
Okay.
it's basically the result of 17 years of his study of collecting great stories about how different musics came together and finding kind of the connections between very disparate stuff, including a whole chapter on the Congo and the Congolese rumba and stuff like that.
Okay.
Um,
I'm ordering that now.
and yeah, one thing that he points out is how like the entertainer is a straight clave thing, you know, is you know,
Yeah,
you know,
right,
and you
right,
know, it's just
yeah,
so much
yeah.
stuff that it's a melody, but it's there, and he was down there, and the amazing connections between Latin music, like even the way like
Mm-hmm.
Carlton Barrett from Bob Marley's group, the reason he tuned those toms so tight was he was trying to get Tito Puente's sound. He was trying to get like a Tito, like a timbali sound, but like, you know.
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a very
yeah.
exciting book, you know, seeing all these
Cool.
connections of yeah.
Do you know the Christopher Washburn book called Latin Jazz?
No,
It's
no,
a it's a thin one and it's packed with so much stuff like that,
mhm,
like the entertainer. There's not you entertainer. I think it's Tiger Rag, and it's a Louis Armstrong recording of that tune.
mhm,
And he basically breaks down why, yeah, this is like clave derived, why this is a Latin jazz. So basically, like you're taking like one of the earliest examples of recorded jazz, and you're it's sort of like reclaims of like all jazz is Latin. Like
yeah,
it's not like and again, so much of like jazz pedagogy and academia is like does not um agree with that.
mhm,
It's fed to you as this, like Latin jazz is kind of fed to you as this, at least it was in my high
yeah,
school upbringing, was like this is a compartmentalized like extra um style that emerged later after real jazz, which is dang dank a dang. It's like
right,
nope, it's actually kind of the opposite
right.
you
Well,
know
also there's another great book, Cuba and its music.
Yes, I know that
Unbelievable.
one.
You've read
Yeah.
that one.
I
So
haven't read it all the
uh,
way, but I have it. Yeah.
you
The
have it.
dense one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have
Well,
it
that
there.
he points out the
Yeah.
whole like rock and roll, like Wild Thing, 145. I mean,
Uh-huh.
that occurred in Latin music
Yeah.
way, 20
Yeah.
years earlier. And it's like just
Exactly.
a standard, like the La Bamba type groove. That's
Yeah.
where you know, that's
Right.
where that comes from, or
Cool.
we point to it first. But anyway,
Yeah.
have we dorked out enough? Is there
I
anyone
mean,
left?
this is great.
Yeah.
This is an interview I've been waiting to have, like to be able to talk about this stuff so in depth. It's, I hope it's interesting to other people that don't play drums.
Well, I've found like I listen to some of those comedy podcasts, and they're talking about all these people I've never heard of, and club owners and stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's still entertaining to me. Actually, I think like
That's
hearing
cool.
people do deep dives.
Yeah, deep dives on the things they care about. It's like, but
Yeah, and then
yeah,
so cool. Before we clock out, I mean, you got a couple like exciting new albums coming out. That there's the Setting
yeah,
ensemble, Thrill
coming up.
Jockey.
Yeah,
Um,
yep. And yeah, so we're playing Big Ears, and I'm playing a solo set at Big Ears, um, and then I'm also joining my friends Nick Sanborn and Chris Roseno, uh, playing in their band. So yeah, there's like three sets of music. I've been like wanting to play this festival for since I knew about it, and I had um, a few really great years going to it, and just like feeling like, oh man, it feels like honestly like back in my Bennington days where it was just kind of like set on fire by like new music or even not new music, just like seeing things I've always wanted to see live, hear live. Um, yeah, it's just an incredibly inspiring environment. And so it's like sad in a way because I don't think I'm playing so much. I don't think I really have time to go see anything else. Maybe one of the nights I can, but they've it's allowed me to be very busy this year, and it's a major dream come true.
Yeah,
Uh,
unbelievable.
yeah, so that's happening, and yeah, and I just released a record. Uh, we talked about Curiosities from the
Hmm.
shift a bit, and that yeah, that's it's there's more shows with that coming up
Oh yeah, you
after
have the
today.
album with Trever Hagen, which is super cool.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, the album with Trever Hagen. That's been like he's my oldest friend. Like I've known him since we were 7, and we're finally getting around to like making a band, for ourselves and music and recording and playing shows. It's been a lot of shows in the Midwest with him lately, but I think we're planning something in the Northeast for the fall. So it feels good to have like all these things rolling. And there's also I play in this band Caliphone that I absolutely there. That's another band that like changed the course of my life even before like 10 years before I started playing in the band. Actually, like that music's been something I idolized for a long time, and so yeah, that's kind of a regular thing. And there's like a bunch of other projects with people that will probably be happening next year too. So uh, yeah, it's a weird thing how you keep yourself. I've kept myself busy with music my whole life, but it hasn't really been this thing of like me really like taking charge of things where I am. It's either my own thing or it's a collective, but all of us having equal input in the creative and the writing and all that. It seems like I'm just really my life is really full with that kind of music making right now, and less of like, oh, drum in your band, which is great, which is something I still love doing, but yeah, it's totally flipped into this uh, different way of keeping busy. And I thought to get to this point, I'd have to be, I don't know, uh, some, like kind of out of my mind, you know. But it's working. Okay, it's totally working.
So here's what I'd pitch you on. You write some grant,
Yeah,
you do instrument buying in Kinshasa and get a whole bunch of those electronic things and bring them back and then play it with your friends and make an album. And
that'd be a dream job.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's I think someone might bite at that.
Okay.
Do
Thank
Music
you.
USA or something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. That's an awesome suggestion. I'll be thinking on that.
No. Well, cool. This was super
Yeah,
fun, man. I
yeah,
really enjoyed
David. Thank
talking
you.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah. So I guess all your albums can be found on Bandcamp and people can check you out if they're coming down to the
yeah. I'll be
festival
out there.
and more to come.
Totally. Awesome,
Yeah, man.
David. Thank you so
All right.
much. What a
My
treat.
pleasure. This was great.
Yeah,
Appreciate your time.
yeah, man. Okay.
Peace.
All right. Later.